You're scrolling through Instagram, and there it is again. Her latest post already has more likes in 10 minutes than your best content gets in a week. And that familiar knot forms in your stomach as you watch the notifications pile up on her phone throughout dinner. Carl Jung warned us nearly a century ago about the psychological traps that would ensnare modern men. And social media has activated every single one of them in ways that are destroying relationships and masculine confidence. What Jung discovered about the human psyche reveals exactly why her follower count triggers such deep insecurity in you. And more importantly, how understanding these psychological patterns can transform your biggest relationship challenge into your greatest opportunity for personal growth and authentic masculine development. When she posts a selfie and gets thousands of likes while your gym photo gets 12, that burning sensation in your chest is what Carl Jung called the shadow speaking. The shadow represents all the parts of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge: the jealousy, the inadequacy, the petty comparisons we make but never admit. Jung warned that what we don't face in ourselves will control us from the darkness. Your envy of her follower count isn't really about numbers. It's about the deep masculine fear that you're not enough. The shadow whispers that her success somehow diminishes your worth. Most men try to suppress this feeling by making jokes about influencer culture or dismissing social media as shallow nonsense. But Jung taught us that dismissing the shadow only gives it more power over our actions and relationships. When you feel that spike of jealousy seeing her notifications blow up, that's your unconscious revealing a wound that needs healing. The shadow doesn't disappear when ignored. It grows stronger and begins sabotaging your relationship from within. You start making passive-aggressive comments about her posts or questioning why she needs so much validation. The path forward isn't to eliminate these feelings, but to integrate them consciously into your awareness. Jung believed that acknowledging our shadow transforms its destructive power into creative energy. For growth, when you can, look at her success and honestly say, "I feel threatened by this." You begin the work of individuation. The shadow becomes your teacher rather than your master, showing you exactly where your self-worth needs strengthening. True masculine confidence doesn't compete with feminine success, it celebrates it. Social media has turned Jung's concept of the persona into a 24/7 performance that's consuming authentic human connection. The persona is the mask we wear to fit social expectations. But Instagram has made this mask so elaborate that people forget who they really are underneath. She curates her feed with perfect lighting and inspirational quotes, while you struggle to get engagement on your authentic thoughts. Jung warned that when the persona becomes too dominant, we lose touch with our genuine self and relationships become performances between masks. You're not competing with her, you're competing with a carefully constructed digital illusion. The danger comes when you start believing that her online persona represents her complete reality. You see her follower count growing and assume she's more interesting, more valuable, more worthy of attention than you are. But Jung understood that the persona is often inversely related to inner fulfillment. The more elaborate the mask, the more disconnected the person feels from their authentic self. Her thousands of followers might be following a character she's created, not the woman you know in private moments. The real relationship exists in the space between your authentic selves, not between your digital personas. Breaking free means recognizing that social media success often measures persona effectiveness, not human worth. Jung's individuation process requires you to distinguish between who you really are and who you pretend to be online. Stop trying to compete with her persona and start appreciating the real woman behind the posts. When you choose authenticity over performance, you create space for genuine connection that no amount of followers can replicate. The self seeks truth, the persona seeks applause. Jung discovered that we project our own unconscious fears and desires onto other people, especially those closest to us. When her follower count triggers your insecurity, you're not seeing her success clearly. You're seeing your own fears of inadequacy reflected back at you. The projection mechanism makes you believe that her digital popularity means she's outgrowing you, finding you boring, or preparing to leave you for someone more exciting. But these fears say more about your internal landscape than about her actual feelings or intentions. Jung taught that projection is the psyche's way of showing us what we need to heal within ourselves. Every time you feel threatened by her online engagement, you're projecting your own relationship with validation and self-worth onto her behavior. You assume she posts for the same reasons you would: to feel important, to gain attention, to fill some internal void. This projection blinds you to her actual motivations, which might be completely different from what you imagine. Maybe she posts because she enjoys creative expression. Maybe she uses social media to connect with friends. Maybe she simply doesn't. Attach the same meaning to follower counts that you do. Your projection creates a story about her that exists only in your mind. The antidote to projection is conscious self-examination and direct communication. Jung emphasized that what we see in others often reveals our own psychological patterns and unresolved conflicts. Instead of assuming you know why she posts or what her success means to her, ask her directly about her relationship with social media. When you own your projections, you can have real conversations instead of arguing with the stories your unconscious mind has created. True intimacy requires seeing her as she is, not as your fears imagine her to be. Jung's concept of the anima reveals why men feel so threatened when women succeed in digital spaces that seem to reward feminine energy. The anima represents the unconscious feminine aspect within every man, the part that seeks connection, creativity, and emotional expression rather than competition and dominance. When she effortlessly gains followers through authentic sharing and vulnerability, it triggers your anima's recognition that feminine approaches to influence might be more powerful than traditional masculine strategies. This isn't about her being better than you. It's about confronting aspects of yourself you've been taught to suppress. The modern digital landscape often rewards emotional intelligence and authentic connection over traditional masculine displays of strength or achievement. Most men respond to this anima activation with defensive masculinity, dismissing her success as shallow or manipulative because acknowledging its validity would mean confronting their own disconnection from feminine qualities. You might find yourself criticizing influencer culture or social media in general as a way to avoid examining why her natural ability to connect and inspire others feels threatening. Jung understood that the anima contains tremendous creative and relational power, but accessing it requires men to move beyond rigid masculine identities. Her follower count isn't a competition, it's a mirror showing you parts of yourself that could enhance your own capacity for meaningful connection. Integration of the anima doesn't mean becoming feminine. It means becoming whole by embracing both masculine and feminine qualities within yourself. When you can appreciate her social media success without feeling diminished, you've begun to integrate your anima constructively. This integration allows you to support her gifts while developing your own unique way of connecting with others. True masculine strength doesn't compete with feminine power. It collaborates with it to create something greater than either could achieve alone. Jung's collective unconscious contains the archetypal patterns that have shaped human behavior for millennia, and social media has activated ancient competition dynamics in ways our psyches aren't equipped to handle. For thousands of years, men established their worth through physical prowess, resource acquisition, and tribal status. But now your girlfriend can gain more social influence in a single post than you might accumulate in months of traditional effort. The collective unconscious still operates on primitive programming that equates social status with survival value, triggering deep masculine anxieties about being displaced or abandoned. Your rational mind knows follower counts don't determine relationship success, but your unconscious treats her digital popularity as a threat to your position in the social hierarchy. The archetypal warrior within you wants to compete. The king wants to dominate. The lover fears abandonment, all because ancient patterns are being triggered by modern circumstances. Jung understood that these archetypal energies don't disappear in civilized society. They find new expressions that can be either constructive or destructive. When her Instagram success activates your competitive instincts, you're experiencing the same psychological patterns that drove men to compete for mates in ancestral environments. The difference is that digital competition often rewards qualities that traditional masculine archetypes weren't designed to navigate: emotional intelligence, aesthetic sensibility, and collaborative rather than competitive approaches to influence. The solution isn't to suppress these archetypal energies, but to consciously direct them toward constructive purposes. Instead of competing with her success, use that archetypal drive to develop your own unique form of influence and contribution. The collective unconscious contains not just competitive patterns, but also cooperative ones. Archetypal energies that celebrate partnership and mutual support. When you align with these collaborative archetypes, her success becomes fuel for your own growth rather than a threat to your identity. Jung's process of individuation is the journey toward becoming your authentic self. But social media has created a culture of constant comparison that directly opposes this psychological development. When you measure your worth against her follower count, you're abandoning the individuation path and surrendering your psychological development to external metrics. Jung warned that comparing yourself to others is one of the greatest obstacles to psychological maturity because it keeps you focused on fitting into social expectations rather than discovering your unique purpose and gifts. Her social media success becomes a distraction from the real work of understanding who you are and what you're meant to contribute to the world. Individuation requires turning inward to discover your own values, passions, and authentic expression, rather than looking outward for validation or benchmarks of success. Every moment you spend worried about her follower count is energy diverted from developing your own creative projects, relationships, and personal growth. Jung understood that each person has a unique psychological fingerprint, a specific combination of talents and challenges that can't be compared to anyone else's journey. When you focus on her numbers instead of your own development, you're essentially asking someone else's life to define your sense of adequacy. The individuation process transforms comparison from a source of suffering into a tool for self-discovery. Instead of feeling threatened by her success, you can use it as information about what aspects of creativity and connection you might want to develop in yourself. Jung taught that everything we encounter in life can serve our psychological development if we approach it with the right consciousness. Her social media success isn't your competition. It's your mirror, showing you possibilities for authentic self-expression that you haven't yet explored. Jung recognized that modern men carry deep wounds around their sense of purpose and value. Wounds that social media comparison inflames rather than heals. When her follower count triggers your insecurity, you're touching an ancient masculine wound that whispers you're not strong enough, successful enough, or worthy enough to keep a high-value woman. This wounded masculine energy creates a psychological prison where your self-worth becomes dependent on external validation and competitive positioning rather than internal confidence and authentic contribution. The digital age has made these wounds more visible and painful because constant comparison is now unavoidable. Every scroll through social media potentially triggers feelings of inadequacy that our grandfathers never had to face. The wounded masculine responds to her success with strategies that ultimately backfire: criticism, withdrawal, passive aggression, or attempts to diminish her achievements to restore your own sense of importance. Jung understood that wounded archetypes don't heal through suppression or projection. They heal through conscious acknowledgement and integration. When you can honestly admit that her success triggers your deepest fears about your own adequacy, you begin the healing process that transforms wound into wisdom. The goal isn't to eliminate these feelings, but to understand what they're trying to teach you about areas where you need to develop greater self-compassion and authentic confidence. Healing the wounded masculine requires developing what Jung called the inner king, the part of you that can celebrate others' success without feeling diminished by it. This healed masculine energy recognizes that her social media success doesn't threaten your value. It actually provides opportunities to practice supporting someone you love without needing to compete. When your masculine energy is whole and integrated, you become a source of strength and encouragement rather than competition and insecurity in your relationships. Jung's concept of synchronicity suggests that meaningful coincidences carry important messages for our psychological development, and her social media success appearing in your life right now isn't random. Perhaps you're being confronted with your relationship to validation and ego precisely because these are the areas where you most need to grow. Jung believed that the unconscious orchestrates experiences to bring unresolved psychological material, to consciousness, and your discomfort with her follower count might be synchronicity's way of highlighting patterns that have been limiting your personal development. The universe isn't punishing you. It's providing you with the exact lesson. You need to evolve into a more integrated version of yourself. Every time you feel triggered by her notifications, synchronicity is offering you a mirror to examine your own relationship with success, recognition, and self-worth. Jung taught that external events often reflect internal psychological states that need attention, and your reaction to her digital popularity reveals exactly where your ego is still fragile or underdeveloped. Instead of seeing her success as a problem to be solved, start viewing it as synchronicity delivering personalized curriculum for your psychological education. The timing of this challenge in your relationship isn't coincidental. It's precisely calibrated to help you develop qualities like genuine confidence, emotional security, and the ability to support others without feeling threatened. Synchronicity transforms relationship challenges into opportunities for mutual growth and deeper intimacy. When you recognize that her social media success serves your development rather than threatening it, you can approach the situation with curiosity rather than defensiveness. Jung understood that meaningful coincidences point us toward our highest potential. Her follower count might be synchronicity's way of preparing you to become the kind of man who celebrates feminine power rather than competing with it. Jung's principle of enantiodromia teaches that psychological health comes from integrating opposing forces rather than choosing sides, and your relationship with her social media success is a perfect laboratory for practicing this integration. The tension between supporting her achievements and managing your own insecurity represents a classic Jungian opposition that can either tear you apart or make you whole, depending on how you approach it. Most men try to resolve this tension by either suppressing their jealousy or by undermining her success, but Jung's path requires holding both truths simultaneously. You can feel threatened and still choose to be supportive. You can acknowledge your insecurity while celebrating her gifts. This integration transforms internal conflict into psychological strength and emotional maturity. The masculine and feminine energies within every relationship need to find balance rather than competition, and her social media success might be highlighting an imbalance that needs correction. Perhaps you've been over-identifying with traditional masculine qualities while neglecting the creative, expressive, and collaborative aspects of yourself that her success represents. Jung understood that wholeness comes from embracing both solar masculine energy and lunar feminine energy within ourselves and our relationships. Instead of seeing her follower count as evidence that feminine approaches are superior, recognize it as an invitation to develop your own underdeveloped capacities for connection and authentic expression. True integration means transcending the either-or mentality that creates relationship conflict. You don't have to choose between your masculine identity and supporting her feminine success. You can hold both as complementary aspects of a complete relationship dynamic. When opposites are integrated rather than battled, they create a third option that's more powerful than either alone. A partnership where both people's gifts are celebrated and leveraged for mutual growth and shared success. Jung's influence on Joseph Campbell's hero's journey reveals that your struggle with her social media success is actually a call to adventure, an invitation to transcend your current level of psychological development. Every hero's journey begins with a challenge that seems external but ultimately requires internal transformation, and her follower count is your dragon to face, the old version of yourself that needs external validation and competitive positioning must symbolically die for a more mature, secure version to emerge. Jung understood that we don't grow through comfort, we grow through confronting exactly the situations that trigger our deepest insecurities and fears. This isn't punishment. It's the universe providing you with the specific curriculum you need to evolve. The middle phase of your hero's journey requires developing new skills and perspectives that your previous identity couldn't access. You must learn to separate your self-worth from external metrics, to celebrate others without feeling diminished, to find your own unique path to contribution and recognition. Jung called this individuation, the process of becoming who you're meant to be rather than who others expect you to be. Her social media success forces you to confront Whether your confidence comes from genuine self-knowledge or from comparative positioning, the hero's journey always requires surrendering false sources of identity to discover authentic power. Your return from this hero's journey transforms you into someone who can genuinely support her success, because your own sense of worth no longer depends on being more successful than she is. Jung believed that completed psychological development allows us to become sources of strength for others rather than competitors. When you complete this transformation, her follower count becomes irrelevant because you've discovered forms of value and contribution that can't be measured by social media metrics. Carl Jung's psychology reveals that your discomfort with her social media success isn't really about follower counts. It's about the deeper work of becoming a psychologically mature man who can celebrate feminine power without feeling threatened by it. Every trigger you feel is an invitation to integrate your shadow, heal your wounded masculine, and develop the kind of authentic confidence that doesn't need external validation to feel secure. The question isn't whether you can compete with her digital influence. The question is whether you can use this challenge to become the kind of partner who adds value to her life rather than detracting from her success. Will you let your ego turn her achievements into your insecurities? Or will you use Jung's wisdom to transform this situation into the catalyst for your own psychological evolution? If this video helped you see your relationship dynamics through a deeper psychological lens, subscribe for more insights that challenge you to grow beyond your current limitations.